Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Jon Huertas, an actor, director from Castle. This is Us, the company you keep, just to name a few. But today I am so excited to be joining the Earth Day virtual stage. And with us is Lindsay Baker. Lindsay, I'm not going to try to speak to who you are. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, what you're passionate about?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, John. It's super nice to be here. Thanks so much for being here. I'm a huge fan. So yeah, I'm Lindsay Baker. I'm the CEO of the International Living Future Institute. I'm an environmentalist by background. I've been interested in sort of tackling climate issues, ecological issues, all these things since I was a teenager. And I was really lucky that I found this little niche of the work around buildings. And so I've been working my whole career on how do we make our homes and our schools and just all the buildings that we have in our world really a part of the climate solution set. How do we change them? How do we make them healthier? How do we make them better for the planet? So it's that little world that I'm in, and that the Living Future Institute focuses on all sorts of ways to make our buildings better. And if you're not familiar, they're about 40% of the energy that we consume in the world, so they're a pretty big part of the climate problem. And
Yeah,
we spend 90% of our time in them, so they're also sort of they have a big impact on our lives. So it feels like a pretty big chunk of the work to take on, but it's a really delightful one.
yeah. A little trivia, Lindsay, that most people probably didn't know about. I actually was studying architecture before thinking about
Wow.
becoming an actor. Yeah, and I was
Oh,
yeah, oh yeah. And when I was younger, I was always obsessed with Earth homes.
yeah.
Probably because I watched The Hobbit on repeat. But I've always thought that we as humans could try to live within the environment instead of on top of it, because every other creature on the planet does. And that kind of idea has always been a part of, like, I designed and built my own house in Venice, and I'm doing one right now in Dutchess County. And I like to use passive design strategies to try to, minimize my footprint.
Exactly. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah. So you totally get it. I mean, and when you say passive like that, I love using that word to describe the work that we do. It sounds simple. It sounds like maybe somehow you're going to be roughing it, but really what it is just doing what humans did for millennia, which was trying to
yeah,
be sensitive to the natural ways that, air and light and heat work so that you can create these spaces that feel so much better, and also, coincidentally or not, are usually made of materials that aren't going to kill you, that are not bad
right.
for our health and not bad for the planet. So it's just like it's a wonderful experience, right? It's so invigorating.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm so glad you get to
yeah.
participate.
Exactly. And what, when studying architecture, I early on, especially because I was, studying architecture when the whole asbestos thing kind of came down. And that's when you
Yeah.
learn, like, all of the toxic things that we were building with for so long, from asbestos to lead-based paints to, the type of insulation, like all of these things are just so bad for the human body. And then on top of that, bad for the planet. You wonder why humans are being so bad when it came to just living, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's so true. But we're such a good little microcosm in this way of what's happening with the larger climate fight, which is that asbestos and all of these kinds of toxic chemicals, they've really been introduced in our world in the past 100 years. And I think we
yeah,
need to remind ourselves that the work of climate action is oftentimes just taking things away, which to
right.
me anyway feels easier than the sort of idea of like, how do we recreate this world from scratch into something that we really want it to be? And at least for buildings, a lot of it is actually just rewinding 100 years and building the way we used to.
Right.
Yeah.
So today, I think there's a lot of, climate anxiety among people like you and me and others that are really concerned about our planet, especially among young people, including myself. Well, I mean, I'm not really young per se, but it's how you feel inside, guys. It's how you feel
Yeah.
inside. So can you real quickly, with, based on your expertise, describe why climate change is so scary to people?
I think about this a lot, and I think it's a couple of things. I mean, obviously, climate change, we watch all of these climate disasters happening, and they're scary and they're tragic and heartbreaking in every way. And
Yeah,
I think the thing on top of it, though, that makes it so difficult emotionally is that this is a collective problem. It's something we have to solve together. And so it's this challenge, not just of sort of understanding the science or trying to prevent this catastrophe, but it's something that we have to do. It's the challenge of coming together as a society and of communities to solve a problem together. That can be really daunting because we know we're not always going to agree, or some people are going to go off and go rogue. And how do we solve that problem when we know that it means a collective effort, a collective action? So I think it can just be intimidating that way, to know that that's the path for us. But I don't know, I guess in some ways I think maybe that's also the really inspiring part of the work, is that it means that we come together, and form community around it.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can figure out how to do it without using our phone. I mean, I think right now with social media and different types of media in general, we kind of are self-isolating as human beings sometimes. And so it's hard to try to, connect with each other, especially on issues like climate change. So hopefully, we can convince people to put their phones down for a second and just start talking to people.
I totally see that. Yeah, completely.
So with climate anxiety being so common, what would you say the antidote to that is? I mean, if we could discover what that antidote is, I think we could save the planet, humanity, and we'd be able to buy our dream house on the coast of Croatia because we'd be insanely rich.
Right, great. I like these plans. Dream houses, all the things. Well, okay. So I guess, I'll say what I feel, what I work on, or the way that I've gotten through it. It's finding your place. It's finding the thing for you that makes a difference, and finding that community. And like you said, it's sort of putting the phone down and interacting with other humans that are trying to solve a piece of the puzzle. My friend Diana Elizabeth Johnson likes to talk about this Venn diagram that she has of like seeking your pathway in the climate movement. And she's sort of making the point that we need all sorts of people in the climate movement doing all sorts of different things. And you get to sort of think about what your strengths are, what you want to do in the world, and also what the climate needs. And then by doing that, that's the sort of Venn diagram of the things, like, what am I good at? What needs to get done?
Right.
And it's really inspiring to think about it that way, because once you figure out, like, you and I love thinking about buildings, we love working on this question of like how to build, maybe because we're a little creative or whatever it is, and that can be a part of the climate fight. That can be, you can find your community within this larger movement through just connecting with something you're passionate with. I think that really helps with the anxiety a lot, because it's not just focusing all day long on how to avert a disaster. You get to do something that you love at the same time, right? You get to sort of feel that sense of rejuvenation that I think we all really need every day. I mean, for those of us that work in climate every day, you got to remember, like, just to take some time every once in a while. I mean, this is what Earth Day, I think, is for a lot of us, for me anyway. It's like,
absolutely,
take a breath and,
and think about it.
Yeah,
and
sure.
just think about it.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people out there looking for ways to, do more to help move things in a positive direction. And your organization is working towards that on a daily basis. So what can people do to help? How can people engage with your organization and your work?
Yeah, well, so there's a bunch of ways people can engage. I guess I'll just say the Living Future Institute, we've been around for a little over a decade, and we're primarily a group that focuses on how to transform the building industry. What is it that we need to do to make sure that the building industry is coming into this regenerative future? So a lot of our time is actually spent on just inspiring people. We run a thing called the Living Building Challenge, which is, you might be interested in. I feel like some of your homes might be along these lines. But it's a challenge that looks at saying, what if a building was giving back more positive to the world than it was taking away? And if you sort of think through that, there's all of these ways in which buildings tend to extract right now. There's, they use energy, they use water, they use a lot of materials that have embodied carbon in them. And they have an impact on their community, the social impact, all the supply chain impact of everything that goes into them. And so the Living Building Challenge actually asks, okay, here's a bunch of steps, a bunch of different things you can do to make sure that a building is actually having a positive impact. So it doesn't have any toxic chemicals in it. It produces more energy than it uses. It cleans all of its own wastewater. It actually has all of these. We have, a bunch of sort of steps involved that look at how it creates better jobs and treats people, humanely in their in sort of the supply chain of all the stuff that gets put into a building. So that's the main way that's sort of the center of our work, is the Living Building Challenge, and trying to get people to rise to that aspiration, which is pretty hard. We've got, a number of buildings around the world that do this, but it's also just kind of a North Star for people to think about how buildings could be built differently. So that's a big focus of our work. And one thing I think people can do is just go and visit our website and check out some of these buildings, because I think what's important is to be able to envision what that future looks like, and to know that it's achievable today, that we can live in harmony with the planet today. And these buildings are pretty good examples of what it looks like when you do that.
So what is your website so people can go to it?
It's living-future.org. So yeah, please visit.
I'll be visiting. I'm going to visit and get into this challenge. Earlier, I was hoping, when I told you that I studied architecture before acting, I was hoping you were going to say, oh, I was an actress before I was an architect.
I was actually an actress before I was an architect.
Yeah.
That's so weird that you say that. I've always thought it wasn't really all that related, but when I was in high school, I was I was Annie in Annie the musical.
Nice. One of my favorites, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's not bad at all. Yeah, I was in Hedda Gabler. I did Hedda Gabler. I was very serious actor at times. Still a little Shakespeare. But no, I mean, I do actually think that there's something about theater that's really important to the movement, and to somehow the way that I exist in the world today, because it is a little bit about making sure that you feel that ability to go out and connect with people emotionally, which is such a part of our work in so many ways. Yeah, I feel like even though I don't get to put on the costumes or anything anymore, I still take it with me, and I miss it, but I'm jealous.
Well, see, both. That's why our marriage on the virtual stage of Earth Day was so perfect.
So totally.
Thank you for making my first time easy, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too. This was a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.